Thank you all so much for joining us at RISE today. We're really excited to have you here as part of our Returns on Rural Investment panel. This year's focus for RISE is on how we can create thriving and sustainable communities. And we all know that small businesses and businesses in rural places are a really important piece of that puzzle to creating a thriving and sustainable future for the state of Vermont. I'm really excited to have representatives here from all across the state today, and our moderator, Kevin Chu, who is the founder of the Vermont Futures Project. So I'll hand it over to him. Thank you.
Thank you, Summer. I just want to take a quick moment to say thank you to Summer, thank you to the team here at UVM for putting on a wonderful event and hosting. It's been great to see the evolution year after year, and it's just getting better and better, and I love the impact that you're creating for Vermont. So thank you, Summer. So I've been asked to set the stage with a little bit of data. I get asked to do that a lot these days. And then we'll dive into a panel discussion with our experts here to learn a little bit more about what it means to invest in rural. So to set the stage, we'll just take a look in the broadest sense. So Vermont's economy is about $37 billion in terms of GDP in inflation-adjusted dollars. That ranks 50th out of 50. And part of the reason why is we're a relatively small state. So when we adjust that on a per capita basis, it's about $56,000 annually, which moves us up to 37th out of 50. It's much better than being last, but certainly it leaves plenty of room for growth. So that's part of why we're having this discussion today. How can we improve on that ranking? But as we heard with some of the panelists earlier, right, we have to dig a little bit deeper than just the dollars and cents and ask about what it means for communities, the human well-being, growth towards what and for whom. And I want to hold that as one of the themes within this discussion, right? It's not just growth for the sake of growth, but growth towards what and for whom. So let's zoom in a little bit and explore the composition of that economy. And we'll do this through some business statistics. So there are just over 17,000 total employers in the state of Vermont. Additionally, there are about 65,000 non-employer firms, meaning businesses that don't have any employees. So if you're keeping up with the math there and adding those together, a little over 80,000 businesses. About 95% of those businesses have fewer than 20 employees, and those businesses with fewer than 20 employees account for 62% of all employment in Vermont. But the distribution of these jobs is not equal. Access to economic opportunity is not equal. And I don't think it'll come as a surprise to folks in this room that this often means there's a lower concentration of jobs in rural areas. And historically, these are not areas for investors who are seeking the highest possible monetary return. That does not mean that rural areas are not worth investing in, but it does mean that we need to sharpen the value proposition and be able to make the business case for why. One reason that I will share in hopes that it will help all of us think a little bit differently about that value proposition is through the lens of hidden potential. The Vermont Futures Project conducted an analysis to assess what I call latent capacity. So it's a calculation that takes a look at a town's current population compared to its historical peak. If we were to just play out a thought experiment and ask, what if we restored each of these towns back to its historical peak? How many people would that add to the state of Vermont? Doing just that would add over 70,000 people to Vermont. You think about a town that used to have 2,000 people, and maybe they only have 1,000 now. There were roads built for 2,000 people. There are probably some underutilized buildings in infrastructure. And that's what I mean by hidden potential, that latent capacity, right? So adding 70,000 people could just be rural revitalization, and that's why we have to be crystal clear with what is the business case, why should we invest, and how can we tap into that. This won't happen by accident, though. We have to recognize that potential, promote it, and invest to make what's possible more probable. Make what's possible more probable. So with that, we're going to get into introductions on the panel, and we'll just start here with Melissa and work our way down. So the intro question is, in terms of getting to know our panelists, for each of you, please tell us a little bit about who you are, what town of residence you come from, and a little bit about your respective organizations as well. And then critically, I think this is the most important piece of it, is share why investing in rural matters to you personally and why you believe in Vermont.
Okay. Hi, everybody. My name is Melissa. I work for the Center on Rural Innovation, and I have a very fun job. I get to manage the Green Mountain Accelerator Fund, which is an early stage investment fund on behalf of Corey, as we call it. You may have seen Matt, who's our CEO, and he was part of the keynote panel. So I live in a small town called Jamaica, down by Stratton. I get a lot of jokes about that, especially given the weather for this state for, 7-8 months of the year. And kind of my experiences in Vermont that led me to this job at Corey was really seeing, we have a lot of lovely, beautiful small towns around there, amazing community spirit, great restaurants and farmers markets, and we gather in the summer in front of like the local general store every Wednesday, and it's beautiful. But over the years, and I've had my home now for 15 years in the state, we've seen a lot of boom and bust moments for a lot of our small communities down there. We rely pretty heavily on tourism, and trades a bit, and there's not too much else business happening. And so, though I still feel young, I recognize now I've been here long enough to see kids grow up and go off to college. And in particular, we're in that area, we're having trouble having our students come back. And, they're looking for jobs that they want to do when they go off to college, quite often, actually, UVM. And they're looking elsewhere because that kind of work isn't available in our communities down there. And so I really love the premise of our organization, Corey. We try and scale tech economies in rural areas that, we feel have the capacity to sustain them. And there are incredible founders out there in like every nook and cranny of the state with really great ideas that just need a little bit of capital to get that off the ground. And so I have a really lovely job where I get to go and meet with those founders and kind of help guide them through that process and, hopefully help them build successful companies here.
Thank you. Annie?
Good morning. Oh, I guess it's afternoon, everyone. Sorry, if I'm squinting, that light is right in my eyes. So. I'm Annie Mclean. I am with the Northeastern Vermont Development Association, NVDA for short. And I work for one of our initiatives called Due North Coworking. It's a physical coworking space in Lyndonville in Vermont's Northeast Kingdom. It's also a programming and event, it's a space for events, and then we have programs that we run within the building itself and then throughout the Northeast Kingdom. We're very focused on entrepreneurship in our region. So we run a small business accelerator. Thank you. Thank you. A 10-week business accelerator called Kickstart NEK, and we kind of travel around the kingdom offering that in some of our smaller towns, or kind of the hubs for our smaller towns. I have a fun job, like Melissa said. I get to help businesses. So in addition to these programs that we offer, we also have our own sort of technical assistance funds and other grant programs that we connect folks to, and then also helping them work with traditional sources of capital, banks, and other sort of investment funds. So my job is to help find businesses that are looking to scale, and help them to find the resources and funds that they need to do that. We are also an area where Vermont's most rural, 3 counties. So very much like Melissa said, we have a lot of small towns. Every town kind of wants the same resources, the coffee shop, the place to connect. Every town wants to have good jobs, and we kind of have to really work together to spread those out in a way that each town can have those resources in a way that makes sense, and that there's hubs for them in different places. So I get really excited about that coordination piece and helping our communities and businesses work together to make sure that we use the resources that we have to the best of our ability and really tell the story of why it's a great place to live and work.
Go ahead, Wei Wei.
Hi, Wei Wei Wang, she, her pronouns. I'm co-executive director of the Vermont Professionals of Color Network. We're a statewide organization supporting BIPOC professionals and business owners, and our mission is to advance the social and economic prosperity of the BIPOC community across the state. And some of what we do is direct business technical assistance as well as data collection. And one of the reasons that we do this is because people want to live here. We conducted a survey in 2022 of BIPOC business owners, and I actually pulled up the report, and one of the quotes says, why Vermont? It is a great place for people of color to be a business owner. We should not be forced to be in urban areas. We are entitled to live here and work here and have thriving businesses. So that is our focus because we want to ensure that everybody has access to the resources. Similar to what you just heard, not everybody has access to those incredible services. Not everyone is aware of those services, so that is what we focus on because Vermont is a place of possibilities. The fact that you can walk into the State House at any given time, on any given day, I think that says a lot about the state. And that is what we keep hearing from our community members that we serve, that Vermont is a place that they want to be because where else would they want to be? And that is what we're trying to create access to.
Thanks, Wei Wei. James?
Hi, I'm James. I'm James Stafford. I am with Biolabs. We are a private company that UVM brought here to run what you could think of as like a WeWorks or maybe the Hula for biotechs and science startups here. So we provide access to space, operations, so that companies can just focus on the innovation while they're here. If you look at my job description, I'm supposed to bring about 10 to 20 biotechs here and help them be successful while they're here. Part of the reason that this is so important to me is that I grew up on a dairy farm in Franklin, Vermont, spent a lot of time in the woods in Richmond, and I did my training everywhere else, in Oregon and in New York City. When I came back as a tenure-track faculty member, and then this opportunity came up. And part of the reason that I took it is it represented a way to build infrastructure to support jobs that might not otherwise exist here. So growing up on a farm and then going and being mostly a real scientist, I realized that there's not really a degree of separation between a farmer and a scientist. The farmers are just applying the science every single day, and they're some of the smartest people that I know. And if we can create a facility and a space that enables that sort of innovation here, de-risk it for capital and that sort of thing, that's sort of what I want to do. And so that's why I'm doing what I'm doing with Biolabs and why that's really important to me.
Thanks, everyone, for those introductions. So you got an overview of who's on the panel. We're going to dive into some questions now. You're in a session about rural investment, so I'm sure one of the thoughts on your mind might be return on investment. That certainly came up in our prep calls. So we'll dive into this concept of ROI in a rural context. An interesting comment that came up in our prep call was the difference between building something to scale and building something to stay. You all mentioned community when discussing the necessary resources and metrics for success. Let's talk about this. What does a high-performing rural investment actually look like to you in 5, 10, even 15 years down the road? And can you share an example of something that you've worked on or a model that you've witnessed that has brought this type of success to fruition in a rural context? We'll start with Wei Wei.
Thanks. Thanks for asking this question. So when I think about this return on investment, I really think about the building to stay. And what that really requires is investment on technical assistance, resources, and services, because I do think that we are a vital part of that ecosystem to ensure that businesses thrive. I think about a project that VTPOC was part of through the U.S. Small Business Administration back in 2021 through 2023. And through that project, I worked with 9 other organizations, so VTSBD, sorry, acronyms. VT Small Business Development Center, okay, this is a challenge. CVOEO, which is the Champlain Valley Economic Opportunities Office. Okay, I'm not going to name every single one. You can go onto our website and look at the project. It was led by VTSBDC. And through that, we were really sharing about ourselves, learning about each other so that we could best support the businesses that were across the state. And that really looked like, we spent the first 6 months of our project, which was 2 years long, really getting to know each other. And to this day, I can tell you exactly what every single one of those organizations does. And I can direct the people who come to VTPOC to those resources because they are the appropriate resources. And when we're investing in those appropriate resources, there might be some overlap, but that is necessary because not every organization or need or resource fits every single business. So that's what I think about when we're talking about that investment on rural, because having all of these folks in this panel exists, that's really critical. We talk to each other, we share resources with each other, and so for me, that's the baseline start.
Great, and I'll invite our other panelists to chime in. ROI in a rural context, models of success.
So building on what Wei Wei said, one good example that we're seeing right now in our fund is actually a company that's going to be soon coming into our portfolio. They're a biosciences company. And the founder originally is from Germany, has lived in the States for about 20 years, has incredible experience, and worked primarily in Boston before getting a bit burnt out and moving to Newfane, Vermont, and kind of slowing down for a bit. He had a great idea for a company. It's like very much early science on paper, but we are excited to support him and have him test it. And he was at this juncture where it was looking like he may have to go back to an area like Boston without the resources to really kind of scale and test the science that he's thinking. And then there came Biolabs and James, and there was this amazing opportunity for a founder who's down in the southern part of the state to get plugged into resources here, and is allowing him to actually test this idea now, and hopefully build this company in Vermont. And for us, and I'm sure we all know this in the room, like in the state of Vermont, you're not exactly tripping over venture capital firms or angel investors. It's it's a limited pool of resources, and I'm sure everyone else on the panel could speak to that as well, but that's really where that idea of community comes in, and relying very much on each other and plugging into the opportunities that are here to help businesses scale. It would be great if we had more betas, but also at the same time, maybe Vermont looks more like small tech companies utilizing AI. Shout out to Vaughn over there, who we're moving into due diligence, but who's built his company practically really a team of one thanks to AI capabilities. And so for us, we love to see a little bit of hiring, some good paying jobs, people getting able to tap into, economies and types of work that they haven't before. And that all feeds back into their community in a lot of beneficial ways. So, happy for the massive successes, but also happy for the companies that can sustain themselves for 5-10 years and show a decent bit of, kind of local or statewide hiring.
Just want to build on that a little bit. Thanks, Melissa. One of the things, I can't think of a good example right here in this particular ecosystem, and I'll tell you about one from Oregon, which I think is a kind of bigger sister state to Vermont in spirit and in the way that they function. But I think the long-term ROIs is if we can help de-risk some of those companies early on, I know exactly the company that you're talking about, so that investors feel more comfortable investing in companies that maybe have a longer play here, for example. With pharmaceutical development, even for companies doing biomanufacturing, it's not like a tech company where you could monetize that or get an ROI in a year or 2 years. These are long-term plays, and the hard truth is about 90% of them are going to fail. And those are scary numbers for investors sometimes, especially in a smaller area where there's not big VCs that are more familiar with it. So if Biolabs can help de-risk some of that, I think that's kind of the example that happened with this particular company. And one way we can do that is by giving things away. So giving away space, for example, and saying, hey, this is a company we believe in, we want them here. If you will invest in them, we will give them space here. And are there ways we can sort of build on that? An example of how this works in the long term comes from Oregon. So a company that I supported there in a co-working space that I built with my business partner in the Hollywood district in Oregon. We retrofitted retail space. They're a Y Combinator company called Birch Bio. They use microbes to recycle plastic. And they came to us, their founder had just undergone a restructuring at a large biotech locally, and so it was a way for him to come to us and say, hey, we have this idea, we've got a little bit of funding to do it, but we need some inexpensive space. And we said, we got this bench over here that we're not really using. What Birch did in the space of a couple years is basically started with that one bench and then kind of took over our facility to the point where we had to say, guys, I'm not sure if we can do this, because the spirit was we wanted to support multiple companies in that space, and so they went and built out their own space. And now they're moving from that proof of concept where they were trying to figure out, well, does our technology work the best way it can? Can we actually digest plastics? To now we need to grow huge vats of these bacteria to digest plastic and go to proof of scale. I think in our space, that's what success looks like, is can we support a company early enough so that then they outgrow our facility, or maybe I need to rethink how our facility works and help those companies stay here through manufacturing. I can think of at least one other company here in the space that's doing similar things in the agricultural world, unfortunately has to leave Vermont because they can't support the type of biomanufacturing that's being done here. And so can we find ways to support companies over the long term? That's kind of what that looks like. Create jobs, help them throughout their life cycle.
I'll add to that too. The build to stay piece really resonates with me. It's great to support all these different kinds of businesses, but I think one of the key things I think about when I think of rural business success is businesses that want to be in a rural place. Founders that want to be in that rural setting, whether it's for the community, the outdoor recreation experiences, just that don't want to be in urban areas. And then businesses with founders that are solving rural problems is the other piece. I was at a pitch competition over in, it was in New Hampshire the other night, and there's this company that is starting an online, they have a storefront, but they're also an online pharmacy, and their business model is based off of offering generic prescription drugs at cost, and with a significant reduction in price for those people that don't have insurance. I'm not going to explain and tell you, I'm not going to pretend I know how the model works, but they did run the numbers, and it's a great service for our rural communities, especially in the Northeast Kingdom, we have pharmacies closing. We have areas where you have to drive 45 minutes to get prescription drugs. We have an aging population that really needs access to that, and so making it affordable and also being able to do that online and offering the storefront at the same time is a great kind of unique business model that really solves a problem in our rural areas. So supporting businesses that are specifically looking to solve rural problems, those businesses do tend to thrive in a rural space. And I'll put in a plug for what everyone else said for the resources and the coordination of those. Having those systems in place and those key institutions that can offer the services and support for those businesses consistently and that are consistently funded and able to do so is really important.
Thanks, Annie. I love that point about resources. It leads us into the next question. So one of the overarching themes for RISE is understanding the role of a land-grant research institution like UVM in supporting rural prosperity in the state of Vermont. From your perspectives, what is that role? I know it's a pretty open-ended question, so we'll start with James.
Yeah, we're a really good example of that. So I mentioned that Biolabs is a private company. We were recruited here by UVM, by Kirk Dombrowski and his team, to open up a biotech incubator to support things because Kirk recognized a need here in the community. And that's really an investment on UVM's part in something that can support a broader mission. So the companies we have here, we have a company that's VC funded out of San Francisco. We have a company that's distributing their products all over the country that's based out of Atlanta, for example, and is doing their R&D here. So I point those examples out because this isn't just a facility built only to support UVM spin-outs. This is a facility that's built to support the larger community. And UVM's taking a real risk on that by helping to to work with us and to bring us here to help make that happen. And so I think those are really good examples of how the university, really puts, for lack of a better term, like money where its mouth is to help invest in creating resources that are here and, enabling us to do things like give away some space to help support people, create local ecosystems and networking events. Hopefully you folks have been to some of them. So I think those are some examples of how the university really partners with us, or some of the internship programs and providing the access to talent for some of these companies, which are huge recruitment tools, right? Workforce development is very important. So there's a number of ways that happens there. Yeah.
I'll invite others to chime in.
Yeah, I agree with that. So I think that UVM could support and also learn from businesses, from nonprofits. So I'll just speak about VTPOC. So VTPOC, thanks to Department of Economic Development, ACCD, we were able to collect data about the BIPOC community in 2024. And we've been analyzing that data with UVM faculty so that we can better understand how to collect data about the BIPOC community, because that is a vital part of the growth of Vermont. That is a growing population in the state, and they're younger, they're smarter, they're more entrepreneurial. And so how do we understand this community that is coming into the state very vibrant and wanting to contribute to the economic development of the state, right? And yet we're using census data that has very little information about who we are as a state truly as we are now. So we're working with them so that they can do the heavy lifting of that analysis so that we can actually build a foundation for data collection now and into the future. So that's part of where I think that UVM can contribute, as well as to learn from us as an organization about what is happening on the ground. Couple things there.
What springs to mind for me is that, UVM is seen as, it's in the Burlington area, it's in Chittenden County, and I will give thanks to Summer and Tricia Coates that they've been so engaged with us in the Northeast Kingdom and coming out and trying to find ways to work with us. We have a company called NEK Biosciences that makes a gel that heals cow hoofs, and they've been working with the Leahy Center and have been supported by research at UVM. But it's a company that's in Barton, Vermont. And again, I'm going to sound like a broken record, but it's a founder that wants to stay in Barton, Vermont. So I think one of the things that, nonprofits like Due North and other state agencies can help with is how do we get UVM, how do we support UVM to support our founders and our businesses where they are? There's amazing resources right here, and how do we kind of have satellite options for those, or have staff or other folks that can come out and help these businesses to grow where they are and to succeed in their even more rural places than, Burlington area.
I will give two quick examples. So referencing James once again, we have someone coming into our portfolio, and the company represents, I think, what you could call like an interesting ripple effect from an institution like UVM, which in my mind is really sort of a major, entrepreneurship anchor for the state. I was thinking the term North Star, maybe that's not quite it, but really it's like an anchor institution. So for example, this company developed a technology within UVM. One of the founders is a professor here. The R&D is now being done at Biolabs. The manufacturing is now being done in Randolph at a food manufacturing facility, and one of the founders lives and works often out of White River Junction. So it's like, when you think about kind of those pools of where money is being spent, and, you've got sort of local economy with RWJ, and then you're bringing a new level of manufacturing to Randolph, which I think is very exciting and makes a lot of sense. And you're also making use of this amazing new facility. And so it's really kind of thinking about where your resources are and kind of where you can tap into. And I'll also give one more plug. I don't think he's here, but Yuri and the Center for Biomedical Innovation. We've been working really closely. And, when we think about kind of what future economies could look like for Vermont in particular, I'm very excited about MedTech. And Yuri's team is doing amazing work exploring these new ideas, working with clinicians to explore potential opportunities for developing new medical devices. And I think there's, opportunities like that are very exciting. So we see a lot that's happening at the university level. And now we're starting to think about how can we bring resources to that to really kind of help, as James said, sort of pressure test ideas and work with these technologies, see if we can get them to a point, where they're ready for investment. And obviously, when you think about medical technologies, you've got R&D, and I think also importantly for the state, you've got manufacturing potential. And so, there's so many opportunities that really begin here that can then sort of spread out to the state and bring economic opportunity to more, areas.
For transparency, I used to work here at the University of Vermont in the Office of Engagement, and I'll just share one of the ways that I thought about the land grant mission, which was, we're called the University of Vermont, but how can we show up as the University for Vermont? And each of you described some examples of success, but also in your comments talked about an aspirational vision for fulfilling that land grant mission. So I want to pull on this thread a little bit more and just ask, from your perspectives, how can we scale up this impact? And I'll actually point towards what Wei Wei said in terms of learning from the community. And we'll start there and just pull this thread. How can we scale up that impact and fulfill that land grant mission?
Well, I'll just, I guess maybe taking it back to the reference for CBI, but really thinking, in an area, in a state that struggles, right, is under-resourced, kind of how can we smartly apply the resources that we have, and how can we, as we talk about community and collaboration, how can we kind of build upon that success, working with what we have at the moment. And so I think it's, that is one smart way to approach it. Let's see where, we see pockets, we see where the future is going. I see Matt over there. Hey, Matt. So, thinking about how we're hoping to scale businesses with AI, right? So maybe we talk about, as a community, when you start making panels and things, I guess things slow down, but really, where can you start to apply some of those resources where we see true opportunities for scaling businesses in the state, and then work collaboratively to try and, move those ideas forward. And that obviously pulls in communities and ideas from all across Vermont, so.
I guess my answer is more simple than that. I think that UVM should just get out into the community to visit and to be part of the community. I also used to work at UVM at the Center for Rural Studies, which I love. And that got me out into spaces, to farms. I still am talking to a lot of those individuals. So I think, maybe I shouldn't say this, but get out of the ivory tower and really get into the community. I'll say for VTPOC, we are constantly trying to work with UVM to get folks off campus and even down to the waterfront, to be honest. And it is kind of a struggle. So I think keeping an open mind, which is why I have so enjoyed working with the team that is supporting us on the data analysis, because they are open, they listen, they're taking our needs, our community needs into consideration. I think that if more departments, more colleges did that, that would be a huge asset for UVM to learn about the community so that they can better serve the state of Vermont.
Yeah, I just want to build on that a little bit. Speaking to some of my own, I'll say challenges as a faculty member too. You write a grant for a research project for an idea that you really love, and oftentimes you've got a problem that you're trying to solve, and you create a solution or technology, but it might be useless, to be honest, right? Like, you've got these pet research projects that are very interesting. Maybe it's going to solve some human health problem way later, but then you go to try to sell it, and no one wants to buy it because you haven't done your customer discovery. And I think that that's something we all can fall into in some ways, is we can assume what Vermont needs, but I think the things that we're saying are we have to adhere to some of those principles of customer discovery, is like, go out and ask people what they need, because you might find some really surprising answers. If I had to pick like one of the reasons that one of the businesses I was part of didn't go where it should have, it's because we didn't do that early enough. And so I think getting out there and asking is so important.
Yeah, I'll add to that too. I think it's part of it is on the community, and some of our organizations is to help bring some of these community problems to UVM and say, how can you help? We have these problems, or we have a need. What can UVM do to help with this? And so yeah, putting some of the onus back on the community. Not that UVM shouldn't be doing anything either, but when we encounter these problems and these needs in our rural areas, that we can kind of say, hey, and not just UVM, but all of our partners, like being more cooperative on a statewide level, and making sure that we connect with the right other service providers or other folks with expertise that can help, instead of kind of staying in our silo and trying to solve everything on our own or just ignoring a problem. So I think it's a group effort.
Can I just say that the Leahy Institute does a great job of doing that? I'm going to give a huge shout out to Emma Spett because she gets out there and like she connected VTPOC to like 1 billion people, so, and is constantly talking about us. So it sounds like everyone else agrees. So
Yeah, thank you all for those comments and just reiterating the need for understanding community needs. Right, it's one thing to work on a research idea, come up with a product, but if there's no market for it, then what's the problem that it's solving? Kirk earlier mentioned that higher ed is in the business of sentences, creating sentences for a variety of reasons, but if there's no market for what you're creating, that's essentially a death sentence. So with that, let's transition to a fun topic. We'll talk a little bit about policy. When we look at Vermont's broader economic competitiveness, our policy environment can either act as a catalyst or a friction point. And that is especially true for rural growth. What is a policy, a regulatory shift, an incentive, or a public-private partnership strategy that you're seeing right now that is moving the needle in the right direction? Or what's a policy change that could be made to unlock greater potential and return on rural investment? And we'll start with Annie on this one.
Thanks, Kevin. I think we're seeing, I know one of the things, I work with businesses, but a lot of the funding that funds the work that we do comes from grants. And we're seeing that a lot of those grant resources that we've consistently utilized over the years, federal especially, are sort of drying up or shifting. I also see that what we have to do oftentimes is sort of chase that grant funding and sort of to make a project fit the funding in order to receive the funding. And sometimes that's not what we need. So I think larger coordination across the state through our nonprofits and our kind of statewide agencies, like I'm part of a regional development corporation. Our RDCs work really well together to kind of identify common needs and share funding resources. Due North Coworking works really well with Black River Innovation Campus, Hula, the folks at Startup Rutland, into trying to identify the work that we're all doing together and where we can kind of come together and seek that funding. And Corey too. Sorry, Melissa, Corey too. Anyway, I think that coordination piece and making sure that we're working together and operating from not just this scarcity space where we're competing, but coming together and identifying the right type of funding and then advocating to the folks at ACCD and for funding that can be more flexible to do the work that we're doing and to kind of showcase the programs that are working and make sure there's funding available for that versus having to chase particular really narrow scope and grant funding in order to make something fit that's not really funding the work that we're doing.
and make it multi-year.
Can you say that one more time?
Make it multi-year funding so that we can actually test it out, make mistakes, because that's okay, and then to be able to innovate in that way.
2 points, and I'm so far from being a policy wonk, so I'm not even going to try and get into the specifics of this, but I have just through experience met with some really great founders building really exciting companies that have then taken them outside of state, really do more to tax incentives, both for the business and then for the investors. I know very little about this, but this is just feedback that I've received. So I think there is something there. It's things I've heard from a lot of our founders that it's just tough to build in the state of Vermont. So, I think that is an area when we think about kind of scaling and tech in particular, where there is probably more opportunities for advancement. And I will also say, we work closely with the RDCs around the state. And I was meeting recently with our partners down in Brattleboro, and they gave me a really good example. They have an accelerator-style program, and what they're finding is that people are coming to them kind of much, much earlier in the process. Like the program has really helped to is structured in a way that takes an idea that's already thought out. Maybe there's already a technology behind it and help them kind of scale it. But really they're finding people that are just coming in with a concept or like, this is a problem that I see and this is one way I think I could address it. And so we had a whole conversation around what does it look like to be a founder? What does it look like to see yourself as a founder? And so maybe we should really be thinking about getting to kids in high school and like really kind of advancing that kind of entrepreneurial training early, and especially now with AI and how you're able to build more with less. I think really helping these kids see themselves as potential CEOs and as problem solvers before they have to go off to school and then potentially not come back to the state. And so I think there's something there about training earlier on, and so we can get kids to a place where it doesn't seem like some crazy foreign concept that like, yes, you could build a business and you can do it here and you can do it with like, kind of marginal resources because technology is trending in that direction.
Yeah, to build on that a little bit and centralize resources and creating undeniable communities of innovation is that I think Vermont's at a point where we're cash strapped, we don't have a huge economic engine, but I don't think we can afford to not give it away right now. And that can look different ways. So in our particular sector, I'm thinking about biomanufacturing, for example, which seems like a beautiful place for Vermont to exist, where you have people that are creating to scale drugs inside bacteria or yeast or whatever else those are, or maybe they're making something that can digest plastic, or maybe they're making something else that you can apply a proprietary blend to like apply to corn and make it grow faster. There's all different ways that kind of fall in that sector. You look at Raleigh-Durham, North Carolina, the Research Triangle, they've sort of nailed this, and they're bringing in companies that are investing billions of dollars into creating facilities there. Virginia's doing this as well. And I don't know all the nuts and bolts for why those companies are going there, other than there's some communities there that these companies want to exist in. It's sort of undeniable. There's talent, there's resources there. And the way that, Raleigh-Durham was built in the Research Triangle, they had to give some things away. They had to earmark land for development for specific purposes. So these are things that, Vermont might be able to do that might cost some money, but wouldn't cost a lot of money. Or give things away, like we mentioned, tax incentives. Maybe it's you take, whatever payroll taxes here in Vermont, let's say it's around 11% of your payroll or something like that, and you're like, if you move here, you're gonna get it's gonna be around 5% for payroll tax, right? And that might be enough to get people here if they have 100 employees, and that's a good tax incentive. The company wouldn't move here anyway, so it's not like you're losing revenue. So I think we have to give a few things away or earmark some special initiatives to build those communities that then are self-perpetuating, right? I'll harp on the Research Triangle again in Raleigh-Durham area. But that's sort of self-perpetuating and has just sort of built momentum, and you can't really stop it. And those are the sort of communities we're trying to build. That's what people at Hula are doing. That's what people at VSET are doing. That's what people at Due North are doing. Like, people around the state are trying to do this. And then it becomes self-perpetuating. But we have to give a few things away first to get there, I think.
Thanks for that reminder, too, that we can look to other places for examples of strategies that have been implemented and borrow ideas from elsewhere. I learned about an alternative definition of R&D, which is rip off and duplicate, meaning that we don't have to create everything from scratch. And that is a way to improve Vermont's competitiveness. The economy doesn't end at the state border. Policy doesn't end at the state border. We have to be attentive to that broader environment. I want to come back to something you said, Melissa, which is you're not a policy wonk, but I would actually say that we are all policy wonks. We have to be, because the policies we have are the ones we created, and if we want them to change, we can make those decisions collectively to shape them moving forward. Right? Policy, to me, is a reflection of the underlying attitudes, behaviors, and beliefs, and this is why these types of conversations are so important, because we can shape that policy environment moving forward. So one more question to wrap up this portion, and then we'll open it up to the audience. We've covered assessing rural ROI, the role that UVM can play, the impacts of policy. So let's pull that all together. If we want to turn this conversation more into an action-oriented one, we have to talk about investor confidence. There are probably some folks in this room who want to back rural prosperity, but they're hesitant because of the risks or long-term sustainability of those investments. So what is your advice? How should they evaluate risk differently in a rural context? And what is the key to ensuring that these investments are truly built to stay?
I will jump in. I wish I had my data team here from Corey, because I believe we just pulled some research recently that actually showed that in some contexts, rural investment is actually outperforming some investments that we're seeing in major cities. So, it's interesting. And so a lot of, I think, what we're contending with often is really more of a perception issue than anything else. And, so it also really depends on what you want to see your dollars do, right? I mean, our goal with our investment fund, and so we're an impact fund, so we look at a few things, like we want to see hiring, we want to see strengthening of communities, but we also do still want to back sustainable companies that are going to perform well and grow. And so that really looks a few different ways. If you want to throw all your money into, say, like SpaceX or something, right, like that is a choice that you can make as an investor. But if you want to see your dollars kind of go further from an impact standpoint, then there is opportunity here to, I think, find really exciting ideas that still have the opportunity to perform well, but also will have kind of generational impacts, really, for how it can strengthen economic opportunity and outcomes for the state. But it is, I mean, we could have a whole other panel on that. Just that challenge that we face is really a perception issue of what are the challenges that rural businesses face, and can you really build successful businesses here? Because, I think we have some clear examples that is in fact true.
I think that the biggest thing is to kind of find the right type of capital for the folks that you're working with. When you look across the country at all these examples, you hear all this stuff about venture capital. Well, nobody in the Northeast Kingdom needs venture capital. It's just not going to happen. I don't want to speak for the rest of the state, but we've really tried to figure out what it is our businesses and our founders need, and how do we help them get there. And I think telling our community story is one thing. We want to attract people that want to support our specific region of Vermont, and I think that can be replicable through the state. We have folks that come to ride bikes at Kingdom Trails. They come to ski at Jay and Burke. They come to recreate at Lake Willoughby. And these folks want to be there. And, they work in Boston, Montreal, New York. They have funds. Some of them want to invest in the community. And we need to do a better job of telling the story of our region is not just a place for outdoor activity and tourism, but a place where cool, innovative businesses can thrive too, and get those folks to put their money there. The other thing is, there's a lot of different financing models, and folks like Janice St. Onge with Vermont Flexible Capital have that slow money approach, and that's really what our businesses need. They're not going to, make a profit for many, many years, and it's going to be a slow, very slow rollout of what success looks like. And we just need to be able to have, again, those resources in place to support these folks over the long haul. And back to what Kevin said at the very beginning, success looks like businesses that stay, and businesses that are there for years and then can successfully transition to a new generation of ownership. That's super important, and we've been doing a lot of work with succession planning recently. So I'll stop.
Hi, I agree with that. A lot of the businesses that we work with, they don't need $100,000. They need $5,000 to like $60,000. And that's not something that venture capital can support. That's not something that even traditional lending institutions can necessarily support. Because like for the BIPOC community, if you think about it, there's a lack of generational wealth. There's also a lot of people coming in from out of state who don't have the community support, the family support to back them up. So that's really what we're trying to get across to a lot of funders these days is there are so many businesses that you can support just with a little bit of money. Come talk to us. We have a lot of businesses that could use even that $1,000, right? And so I think it's that shifting of mindset to be okay with taking that risk, making sure that that businesses are given time to succeed, that they're allowed to honestly make mistakes. So a little goes a long way, and also for VTPOC, it's also contributing time, connections, that energy, learning about the businesses, the individuals behind the businesses, as well as if you have skills. So my co-founder and co-ED, Tino, is speaking at noon if you are interested in other things that we're doing. Shameless plug, but we always talk about, supporting in terms of back office. That's something that small businesses might need: bookkeeping support, website development, basic little things. So I think there are really meaningful investments on rural businesses that people can take, and it doesn't have to be $100,000.
Yeah, I think building on some of those themes is de-risking some of those investments. And there's a few different ways to do that. One of them, unfortunately, companies, or fortunately, however you look at it, companies in our space are going to need some bigger ticket investments. Sometimes it's $100,000 minimum. Sometimes it's a couple $1 million or more to get into clinical trials, right? So can we de-risk that by, for example, we provide that by someone moves into our facility, we're going to save them about half to 1 FTE of a personnel just in our operational support. We've got $2 million of capital equipment that's free for people to use as long as they're a member in our facility, right? So that way, an investor doesn't have to invest in that every time they start a company here. So there's ways to de-risk that. Also, for us to look at companies and say, hey, this is a promising company, and then hopefully get it to other investors, and there's been some examples of success there. But the other way is really the community, right? Is the support that Vermont gives, and why that's a really interesting statistic that rural investment pays off a little bit more than some of the urban investment. And I think about my own college career. I went to school in actually Eastern Oregon, which is a very small school. And the only reason I think I ever went anywhere in science was because I had that nurturing community where people actually believed in me, whereas if I went to Harvard or MIT or somewhere else, not that I could even get in there, but I would have got swallowed up by the Mark Zuckerbergs or Sergey Brin's at Stanford or something like that, right? So it's convincing investors as well that, look, this company's not going to get lost here. We've got their back. They just need a little bit of capital, and we can make it go somewhere.
Great, thank you all so much. So I said that we'd open it up to audience questions. I'm going to pull some moderator privileges here because I said questions. I didn't say answers. Because if we did a Q&A, we'd get 1, maybe 2 questions, and then a bunch of people would leave disappointed that they didn't get to have their voice heard. So in the spirit of answering tough questions and thinking about that next innovative idea, I want to hold this time at the end of our session for people to share their questions, and you're actually not going to answer. So we walk out of here with different ideas to pursue answers to as we leave this session. So at this time, I'll invite folks to stand up and ask your question, and we'll just let it sit in the room and inspire us.
Supporting the growth of companies, because companies want to now have more employees. Their employees want to have good schools, good places to live. How does the intersection of that challenge that we see in Vermont match up with the financial investments that we've been talking about?
Great question. I saw some more hands, so we'll go here and then work our way across. If the mic comes to you, you've been selected to share your question.
So, when I think about rural regions, we have industries that thrived at one point. These legacy industries hold a knowledge base that has still some level of relevance today, and there's community support that has been bought into these legacy industries. All of them have an opportunity to innovate, and so when we think about the future of Vermont, what rural legacy industries have the biggest opportunity for reinvention that leverages that knowledge base, that takes advantage of the resources that are there on the ground, and doesn't isolate by forcing new technologies or new things that will likely get rejected by the community?
Great question. So I see more hands. This is fun. Let's keep it rolling.
My question is, I'm wondering if there are any programs available to that young person who doesn't necessarily fit into a niche category, who's grown up in Derby, let's say, in working class. Annie had mentioned earlier that we want to invest in people who want to be here. So just thinking about those young people who already have ties here, who know that spring doesn't show up until the end of May in Vermont, who won't be leaving after just a couple of years, and if those programs exist?
Hi, my name is Anita Selleck, and I am the Employer Partner Program Manager at UVM. I help businesses recruit early talent or interns at UVM. I'm here at the Career Center table right down the hall. But my question is, I'm not an investor, I'm not a banker, I'm not a finance person, but what if there was like a Vermont mutual fund? Like, okay, if you have a venture capitalist, who knows, maybe you're not going to get 100%, but like maybe if, based on goodwill, based on community support, a venture capitalist invests 100,000, and then there's this fund of 3 million or 4 million or 5 million, and then they pick the businesses that they want to invest in, like the small guys, like what Wei Wei was saying. You know, a Vermont mutual fund, why not?
I'm just going to add quickly, if you're online and you have a question, feel free to put it in the chat. Our student ambassador, Annabelle, will come over and take that question for you.
My name's Bill Biederman, and I'm part of the board of the Hannaford Career Center. And if people can think about how we separate the budgets between career centers and standard education in the state, because it's the only way the career centers are going to move forward. Right now, they're fighting for the same dollar, and there are tons of people and businesses who want folks coming out of the career centers.
Good morning, Peter Plumeau with Reframe Lab. I'm here with my colleague, Michelle. We help small businesses, among other things, build their resilience to climate disruption. My question doesn't really have a lot to do with that, however. My past career, I did a lot of work around the country and frankly internationally as well on economic development, infrastructure investment, and so forth. So my question starts with the kind of truism in economic development and business attraction of the concept of you have what's necessary to attract or grow those businesses, but it's not sufficient. And when we look at our neighboring states, for example, New Hampshire, New York, Massachusetts, Maine, maybe, what do they have that's more than the basics that we offer? And what can we do about that?
So I'll hand over there and one over here, and then we'll wrap up, because I know there's a delicious lunch waiting for us.
I have a mic. Oh, sorry.
You can go first.
Go ahead, sure.
Send it.
1 out of 5 Vermont kids are going to bed hungry. And my question is, how might my nonprofit better connect with the right donors who do believe in a more equitable Vermont, that kids can go to bed with better energy and a better mood and to live a better life in Vermont?
Tough act to follow. Hello, everybody. Vaughn Michike, solo founder of a new app for decision making, which is how we all move forward. And I guess my question I'd like to pose, I'm 11 years into my tenure as a real Vermonter, and what attracted me here originally was the awesomeness of all the outdoor things that you can do. And so we were coming up here from the Mid-Atlantic region, mountain biking and four-wheeling and all the things. And we're like, well, let's make home Vermont. And that ended up being rural Vermont, which has been an ungodly amount of work for the last 10 years, but it's been super rewarding. And I don't typically wear a sports jacket, and I talk to the youth in the town. And I guess my question is, how can we create a culture in rural Vermont of work hard, play hard? Because right now, it seems like we attract people that want to play, and they want to work as little as possible. And we've enabled that as a state in many ways. And it doesn't lead to great growth and prosperity typically. So anyway, that's my
Great.
question.
Thank you very much. We are at time, but again, moderator privileges, so I'll take the chance to ask one last question as we wrap up, which is for each of you to think about what can I invest beyond just dollars, right? How can I show up and invest my time, my other connections to people in my network? An investment is a statement of belief and potential, and there are many, many ways that we can invest beyond just dollars. And I believe in the potential of rural, I believe in the potential of Vermont, and I want that to be the final statement. What can I do to show up and invest, whether it is money or time or some other resource? Thank you.
Great transition, Kevin, because we're actually going to be heading to our lunch and learn sessions next, and there's going to be a game theory session kind of focused on exactly that. What do you bring to your rural towns in the Grand Maple Ballroom? So you're all welcome to head down for lunch, which is on the first floor of the Davis Center this year. There's elevators in the Levac room, and there's stairs by the event services, and we hope to see you at the next lunch and learn. Thank you to our panelists.